Okay, so we have two more talks today, and the next talk will be presented by Natalia Slioussar from Utrecht Institute of Linguistics in collaboration with Malko.
Yeah, I'm both from Utrecht and from St. Petersburg, and Anton is actually also here, the second author. So I'll first make an overview of So what is agreement attraction? It was noted already in the 19th century that speakers of English make some characteristic mistakes. So here I give one example. The path to the monuments are littered with bottles. So in this subject-noun phrase, there is the head of the path and it's singular. However, there is an intervening noun. And it's plural, and so there are a lot of mistakes where the verb in the sentence is also plural. And as you see, like it was noted a long time ago, and there were at first a lot of studies of this phenomenon using speech error corpora, but today we will focus on studies using different experimental techniques. So then, from the very start, it makes sense to say that there is a plural markedness effect. So if we reverse the numbers of the head noun in this subject-noun phrase and the potential intervener, so if it's the path to the monument, there are very few mistakes when the main verb in the sentence is singular. So what I mean by very few, so more or less if we just count random mistakes when, I don't know, monument are or monuments is, so the number is comparable, more or less. So of course there are some absolutely random mistakes in agreement, and the number of these mistakes is comparable. While these mistakes are quite frequent, so in English, maybe about 13% of these cases contain mistakes. And I'm not only talking about spontaneous speech, but also about well-edited written texts like, I don't know, New York Times text. So the same pattern was found in many other languages. So here are some examples in German, in Dutch, in French, in Italian, in Spanish, and in some others. Then it was also found in some other constructions. So here I just give one example again from English because it's easier to comprehend online. So the hypothesis one entertain influence visual information search. So here you can actually see that the potential, what we would still call potential intervener, doesn't actually linearly intervene between the subject and its verb. And still, there are quite a few of these agreement mistakes. And yeah, less than in that first configuration that I presented, but and there are some other constructions. Then, if we look at comprehension, we may notice that people fail to see the very same mistakes that they tend to produce. So there is again a vast body of experiments, like just one. Then, why bother? So why are these agreement attraction mistakes so attractive? So starting from a paper by Bock and Miller in 1991, there is a huge body of experiments on attraction errors. So why? Because they give us a chance to learn how grammatical processes work in real time. They give us a chance to learn how features are represented. Because, for example, if we start thinking about this plural markedness effect, of course, we start thinking, where does it arise from? If we take number, in typology, we can see that, for example, if we take, say, Graf Corbett's work or some other books, we can see that there are languages that mark plural but do not mark singular, but not vice versa. So plural can be considered marked in this sense, that is totally independent from these agreement destruction errors. Then there is another sense. So if we take some cognitive studies, again, a lot of people say that plural is more cognitively complex compared to singular. So it's very interesting where exactly this markedness effect arises from here. And this is what I'm coming to at the end of this talk, whether there would be comparable mistakes with other features. Specifically, I will look at gender, which is totally different in this respect. So we can say that, for example, neuter is unmarked in some sense. For example, neuter is unmarked in the sense that we use it with impersonal verbs in Russian. But of course it's a totally different sense from number markings. So, and all these questions can be addressed by looking at these agreement errors. And this is especially valuable for production, because there are plenty of experiments we can do on comprehension, real-time comprehension. But there are very few things that we can do to see how syntax agreement happens in real time during production. Because of course we can't pinpoint the moment when we start producing the sentence, and we can't pinpoint different steps that we make before we actually pronounce the sentence. And so this is why studying various errors and trying to induce them and to see how many errors we will get here or there is more or less one of the very few ways to do online production experiments on syntax. So, and of course, yeah, this is just a side note, but yeah, maybe it's important to make here in St. Petersburg, in Russia, where there is this very rich tradition of working with corpora. So, of course, experimental studies do not in any way undermine the importance of corpus studies. So they just complement them. So the only thing is that experimental studies are better suited for teasing different potentially relevant factors apart. So just to present the methods used in experiments. So if we take production experiments, then in these experiments participants are presented with a subject phrase, for example, the key to the cabinet, and are asked to complete the sentence. And of course, there will be different conditions for different subjects and for different items. So singular, singular, plural, plural, singular, plural, and plural, singular. And only in this combination where the head is singular and the potential intervener is plural, there is a significant number of agreement errors. So in all other conditions, yeah, there are a couple of errors once in a while for a whole pool of data, but yeah, it's negligible. So yeah, so this is a free sentence completion task. So there is another paradigm that is more restricted. And in this paradigm, participants are presented with a predicate first. For example, was Rusty or were Rusty. And then they see or hear a subject phrase that doesn't always agree with this predicate. For example, the key to the cabinets or the keys to the cabinets and so forth. And then they're asked to combine this predicate and this subject in a sentence. And of course, when these do not agree, they make mistakes, and the number of mistakes rises significantly when the head noun is in singular and the potential intervener. So if we talk about comprehension studies, they use the following techniques. Yeah, I'm doing it just because when I will be presenting these studies, I want it to be clear what was actually done. So comprehension studies. There are some self-paced reading studies. So people are reading sentences that are grammatically correct and sentences with mistakes, including the sentences with these potential interveners. And you can see what can be called a grammaticality effect. So more or less people do not notice the relevant type of mistakes. Then there are EEG studies where, generally speaking, you see P600 whenever there is a mistake. And P600 for this agreement attraction mistakes is very diminished or absent. Then there are acceptability judgments. It sounds kind of, it may sound not very expected, but people are actually, people tend to rate sentences with attraction agreement errors as more acceptable than sentences with other types of mistakes. So then if you look at different factors that were identified as important, first of all, and probably most important of all, it was noted that what matters is syntactic structure and not the linear order. So first, you can see that there are more mistakes in the sentences like one, the inscription on the doors to the toilet, than in the sentences like two. So here the plural is structurally hierarchically closer to the head noun, but further away from the verb. Here the plural is right by the verb, but structurally distant from the head noun of the subject phrase is greater. And people make more mistakes here than here. Then also a quite drastic example that there is more or less the same number of mistakes in affirmative sentences and in yes no questions, where the verb is actually removed to, or if it responds. I may not want to use the term movement, but I use the kind of didactic sense. So where the verb is not sitting after the potential intervener. And some studies show that linear distance effects matter too, but in any case they are much. Then if we look at semantic factors really fast, we can see that there are different results in different studies. So first people tested for distributivity. So if you look at sentences like the baby on the blankets, it more or less implies that there is one baby sitting on a couple or more blankets. And if you look at the sentence like starting with the label on the bottles, test that people tend to think that there are multiple labels labeled per bottle. So, and there are more mistakes in this condition, although like different studies showed somewhat different things. Then another thing that matters is semantic integration between these two entities inside the subject phrase. I'll just mention. Then also what matters is how well does the intervener combine with the verb. So to give one example, the letter from the professors were burned and the letter from the professors were praised. So in this case, the verb praise combines with a potential intervener much better than in this sentence unless one hates professors. So there are the grammaticality effect, so this is a comprehension study. The grammaticality effect is much stronger here. However, it didn't work out that way in all studies. So some other studies didn't show any effect of combinability of the verb with the potential intervener. So, and many things happen in studies. What's important for us is that the several studies show that the potential intervener must look like a subject. So, if we take these two German examples, which means the position, and position is singular, against the demonstration for the position on the demonstration. So only in this condition there is a significant number of mistakes. And you can see here that the plural accusative is formally ambiguous. So it looks like, the form just coincides with the nominative form. And the dative form doesn't. And so only when the potential intervener looks like a potential subject, one gets a significant number. So, and now, given all this, one of the crucial questions that comes up is, are there similar mistakes with other agreeing features? And of course, gender is the obvious candidate. Because gender agreement in those languages where gender agreement exists at all, it happens in similar syntactic configurations. But first, for the majority of nouns, for inanimate nouns, it's a purely formal feature, unlike number, which is semantically loaded for the majority of nouns. And second, we have very different expectations with respect to markedness. So while we know about plural markedness from cognitive studies, from typological studies concerning morphological marking, and then also many people following Trubetskoy regard number as a privative feature. So more or less they would say that singular is unmarked option, and plural is the kind of, that you do not mark singular at all. So singular is the default option and plural is the marked one. So of course it won't work out with gender that way. And in languages like Russian there are 3 genders, so there are 3 members of this category. So we have very different expectations. And actually there was one study specifically dedicated to agreement errors with gender, made on Slovak. It was a sentence completion experiment, and the conclusions were, in my view, quite striking. They concluded that there are markedness effects, and they concluded that feminine is marked with respect to masculine and neuter, and masculine is marked with respect to neuter. So it means that there were agreement mistakes. So more feminine forms than masculine and neuter forms, and more masculine forms than neuter forms in the sentences where there was a gender mismatch between the head noun and the dependent noun inside subject. So, and now we started a project studying agreement mistakes in Russian, and one of the goals that we set in this project was to replicate this study and to see whether we get the same pattern in Russian. Because this is a surprising pattern, and it would be both surprising to get this pattern or to get something else. So I should mention that there are previous experiments on agreement errors in Russian. So here are a couple of references. But the thing is that they do not control for this case problem that I mentioned here. So they do not use stimuli with accusatives here. And so there are very few mistakes. And we wanted to follow Badeker and Minyak, and we wanted to control for this factor to see whether we will get the same pattern of gender mistakes. And actually in our pilot studies, we first replicated their experimental design controlling for case and then used another design where agreeing and non-agreeing predicates are given before the subject phrases. And so far we did not find any agreement attraction for gender. So we found agreement attraction for number, but no agreement attraction for gender. If it were not for Badeker and Kuminiak study, I would say that this is an expected result. Because in case of number, there is this clear markedness of plural that can be both attributed to its semantics and to its morphology. It's an interesting question what it should be attributed to, but there are multiple ways to explain the markedness effect. While if you take gender, prima facie, if one just looks at the cognitive studies, and if one looks at the semantics of gender, if one looks at the way that the gender, if one just looks at the way that there are three members of the gender opposition in Russian, one doesn't expect any gender to be marked. So I would say that I would expect this result, but so far I do not have an explanation why our results are different from Badeker and Kuminiak, and the fact that we are getting number mistakes actually tells us that the experimental paradigm works and that we were able to induce the relevant mistakes. So it can't be just the case that, I don't know, all our participants, just are not prone to produce any mistakes, or that we did not put enough experimental load on them, or whatever. The only thing I can say that there are some mentions in the previous literature that there are no gender agreement mistakes, say, in Italian. Just nobody looked at that really closely, but in a couple of papers on, say, Italian, I think maybe also Spanish, people mentioned that they did not see any gender attraction errors. So I guess so far this is it, and we have the time as well, so I'll stop here.
All right, thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
We have a couple of minutes for questions before we proceed to the last of today.
So your speculation or any differences, like between Russian and Slovak,
Actually, not really, because in Slovak is absolutely like Russian in this respect. Yeah, it also has three genders. It also has this feature that it's actually very difficult to come up with the stimuli because there are very few prepositions that would select accusative. And I thought that this is why we do not find any gender agreement mistakes in speech error corpora. It also has agreement in gender only in the past tense. So it more or less works like Russian in this respect, so no idea why.
Maybe in terms of the number of regulars and irregulars?
In gender. So they have the same declension system as we do. They just have fewer cases. This is the only thing, but the cases that they lack are not relevant for this discussion. Seemingly. Yeah, no idea why.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, great. Thanks very much.